Hey guys, Clifford Pirch here. I'm getting ready for the U.S. Open. It's big Western tournament. It's the big Super Bowl of the West. So it's an exciting event. It's going to be on Lake Mohave. Historically, it was on Lake Mead, but it's just a big desert reservoir, and it's a fun event because it's a shared weight format. So I've got a co-angler. There's a pro and a co in the boat. We're working for the same 5 bass. So what I like to do is get my co-angler set up to complement whatever I'm doing. You know, if you fish as a co-angler a lot, there's just some things that you always carry. One, you're gonna carry a drop shot. You're gonna carry some finesse things like maybe a Ned rig, Nico rig, things like that. And then you might have a few power fishing tools. So we're gonna go through and talk about some of the things you can grab and just have with you, because you want to be able to adapt with whoever's boat you're going to jump into, but there's some things that will overlap almost anywhere you go. So we'll talk about those. So again, you want to get you some drop shot stuff. We've got some terminal tackle here. I like the little pencil style weights. You know, get you some drop shot weights. Then we're going to go over into the hook section. I like the gamakatsu hooks. Something especially for a co-angler here, a great one would be this G Finesse tournament grade, like a number 2 or a number 1 nose hook drop shot. That'll allow you to fish your little worms that we'll go talk about, like cliffhanger, 4.5 inch, nice natural worm. Also your little minnow baits, any little drop shot trick that you like to use. That nose hook's going to work good because we're going to be dealing with a lot of smallmouth. It's predominantly a smallmouth lake. Now there'll be some largemouth weighed in, and you can catch largemouth on that hook as well. Drop shot in some of the same territory, but there will be probably a heavier on the smallmouth side for this event. So again, we're thinking some of those smallmouth tools, light line, we're going light line on your drop shot rod because it's clear water. Smallmouth have really good vision. So we're going probably a number 2 gamakatsu nose hook on a lot of that. And you can also go some of your weedless setups. I'll use a weedless setup to get in some of that, to get in and out of the grass or get in and out of the artificial structure that's there. And there's some trees. There's a lot of old wood on Lake Mohave. So that's something you want to keep in mind. All right, another big tool that I like to see when my co-anglers show up. A lot of guys like the old Hula grub. This is the Yamamoto Hula grub. Anytime you're fishing these southwestern lakes, the Hula grub on a football head is just a great choice. And this is actually where it was designed. Some of the original ones came from fishing Lake Powell, Lake Mead, Mojave, Havasu, the desert lakes, and especially on that Colorado River. So anytime I see somebody show up with a Hula grub, I'm kind of excited. I feel like he's going to get one of the right ones during the day. That's a good bait. That's a good bait anywhere you go in the Southwest. That's another good tool for you to have if you're around rock cover, points, ledges, deep breaks, things like that. So that's another really good co-angler tool. So when I meet my co-angler, I'm going to make sure that he's got a drop shot on. I'm going to want him throwing a cliffhanger. A little nice, natural, finesse drop shot worm. Probably a natural color. The lake's really clear. A lot of bluegills, crawdads, but clear water. So I'm going to be going pretty natural colors for the most part. Sometimes those bright colors will get bit because we are getting into that fall time frame. But I'm going to make sure he's got a cliffhanger and access to lots of good worms. Maybe the ram tail on a jig. Again, throwing the jig. I talked about the Hula grub is a big one. Throwing a jig with the ram tail is going to be a good one for me. Those are 2 things I might want my co-angler throwing. Another one is a little swim bait. That's something easy. You throw it out, you wind it in. It's a natural presentation. It gets bites. So the pro swimmer's a good one. I like the natural colors. This one's probably carp killer. Yeah, carp killer is a really great color. Clear water. We're imitating those shad, and they're going to get a really good look at it. So I like those good natural colors. But that's another good co-angler tool. Throwing that swim bait, keeping that in your hand, that's going to get a bite. That's going to get some bites. Might get that big smallmouth sometime throughout the day. Another good co-angler tool is a Ned rig. That's something it's not as common as the drop shot or the swim bait, a lot of those things, but a Ned rig is a great tool, especially to get those smallmouth to bite, but it catches big largemouth. I caught a big giant one at Lake Fork one time, like 7-8 pounder on Ned rig. So they will catch big ones. You know, I'm going to make sure my co-angler's got some of these ram heads. You know, going a little bit heavier is probably easier because he's not able to be in control of the trolling motor and how fast the boat's going. So, you know, getting something that'll get out there and get to the bottom quicker might be best. Unless you're just really soaking an area, you might go with some of the lighter ram heads. But Ned rig, definitely a good key bait to have in your co-angler's hand. That's going to get some bites. All right, guys, another great tool. And because we're junk fishing in the fall, there's a lot of different things going on. But anytime the U.S. Open's going on, topwater is always a factor. So, you know, I'm looking at some Ricos here. These guys have got a fantastic Rico section. And I'm looking at some of the good ones. I would go with a lot of the shad colors or the bluegill colors. And that's a great co-angler tool. You got a guy that's working a fast bait in the front, sometimes throwing that Rico out, that little slower presentation gets the bites. And a lot of big Lake Mead, Lake Mohave bass, big bass winners in the U.S. Open have come on the Rico, and lots of topwater fish. So topwater is another good tool. You know, you can throw any direction from the back of the boat, or, you know, the guy fishing in the front, of course, too. But a topwater is a good tool to just cover some water, get it out there, and maybe get one of the right bites. Guys, one of the other things that I always try to do, I try to find out what the co-angler's strength is. What are you confident in? What do you really like to throw? Because if he's confident, he feels good about throwing it, sometimes you're going to just have something that he likes is going to catch that big bass. It's going to catch a fish sometime throughout the day. You're only going for 5. You don't have to catch 50. You know, I'm wanting my guy to catch 1, maybe 2, 3. You know, each time, you know, it's an upgrade. It helps. So work on that one bass. But again, I'm wanting him to be throwing something that he's confident in. So, you know, it might be a deep crankbait. It might be a jerk bait, a spinner bait. You know, there are things that might not necessarily be something that I'm going to be throwing, but if he feels good about it, I want to get that in his hand. He's fishing hard. He feels confident. You're going to get those bites when you're fishing confident. So that's another thing. There's a lot of things that are going to be working. You know, your swim baits, and you know, a lot of your power fishing tools. It's just that time of year where there's so many things that work. You're not going to see anyone that's really kind of pared down to just 1 or 2 baits. Now the pros, some of the pros will be pared down to where they're just kind of focusing a few key ways. But as a co-angler, you're trying to just add that extra fish, and you know, you want to make your day. You want to survive every day too, is the other thing. Like, you don't want to end up starting the tournament, you know, with 3 fish or 4 fish. You want to weigh that limit, make sure you're in the game for the whole event. So as a co-angler, you want to use those tools that get bites. So that's another little co-angler trick. Okay, here's another one from experience fishing the U.S. Open. The first one I fished, I was leading for 2 days, and I was talking past my co-angler a little bit, and it just came from inexperience. But when you start talking about fishing line, you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And a lot of fishing lines might tell you a certain pound test, but say a Seagar or a Sunline, you know, they're going to be a smaller diameter line, as opposed to like you've got a P line over here or a Berkeley or something like that. They're going to be bigger diameter lines. So 6 pound in one does not match 6 pound in the other. So you want to make sure you know what kind of line diameters you're dealing with. And again, we're talking about clear water over there. So a lot of times you're going to use a little bit lighter line, especially for your finesse techniques, your drop shotting, Nico rig, Ned rig, all the new little tools, jig head minnow fish and things like that. So I'm going to be going lighter line. And if something's moving really fast, I can get away with a little heavier line. The light, slow stuff you get a really good look at. You want to be using light line. So that would be one of my tips, is kind of know your line and be talking with your pro or your co about how what kind of stuff you need to be throwing it on. I had a guy that broke off a couple, you know, and he told me he was throwing 4 pound test, and I'm like, man, you don't have to be throwing 4 pound test. You know, once you have those conversations, you can kind of try to alleviate those mishaps, and felt like that cost me my first U.S. Open win. And, you know, it's one of those things, you got to get every bite in the boat. You know, fishing a great tournament means making every opportunity count. So that's important. Okay, so guys, I'm a Phoenix rods guy, and I might even have some rods rigged up for my co-angler when I get there. I always want to make sure some of the right tools are available for him to use. Now, the other thing is, when I'm talking about rods as a co-angler, you don't want to show up with 20. You get too much stuff, you know, piled in that corner, and 20 is an exaggeration, but if the guy's got 7, 10 rods over there in the side of his seat, it makes things hard to deal with. You just want to make sure you got, you know, 3 to 5 rods that do the things you want to be doing, and you've communicated that with your pro ahead of time. So you kind of have an idea. You know, again, you're probably going to be wanting a couple of spinning rods, maybe a power fishing rod, a heavy rod, and a crankbait rod. You know, just things that will cover a variety of conditions and fishing techniques. But if you've got too many rods over there, you're fiddling around and you got messes, and driving down, you go on a long boat ride, the wakes, you know, the waves are rough, you're going to end up with a lot of messes. So as a co-angler, you want to keep it kind of concise. You know, you don't need 100 things out there. Remember, you're going for that, you know, that one bite at a time, and just getting 1, 2, 3, 4 bites throughout the day is all it takes to have a great bag together.